Welcome to the fantasy draft room. I am Chase, and with me, as always, my man Cody. We got our top five of the wide receivers for 2023. You ready to do this thing?
Way too fucking early, but let's get into it, man. We don't know anything about these wide receivers. We got to dig into small 22 film, which we don't exactly have yet, but what we do have is statistical analysis of these guys. We have their numbers that they produced for. Unlike the running back position, wide receivers, one where a little bit more you can evaluate just from the statistical analysis. Running back and quarterback, I think you need to look a little bit more at the film. But with wide receivers, a lot of it is just, hey, show me that you can produce, show me that you can do it at an early age, show me that you can do it at a big school. And that's what we're getting into today. Our way too early top five.
Yes, sir. So let's kick things off here. I think we have some similarities yet again. And again, it is very early in the process. But right now, I'm going to give you my number one at this point in time is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba. So JSN out of Ohio State. Great breakout age. He had 1,600 yards his sophomore season with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on the field at the same time. So he really stood out. He's my number one. I have a feeling, is he your number one as well, or where are you at with JSN?
He is my 1A.
Okay.
That's fair. Right now, he is tied with another guy in my statistical analysis, but I can't deny what he did on the field. If you're going to tell me that both Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are top 15 dynasty wide receivers in the league, there's no way that I can put the guy who outproduced both of them while they were still on the same team anywhere below the number one. I can't do it. Jackson Smith-Njigba, we've seen some conflicting reports come out about him. Is he a wide receiver 3 for a team like some people like to say? I don't see that. I mean, he absolutely dominated that sophomore year at Ohio State. So with what he put on the field, at the age he put it out, his height, weight, BMI, everything across the board is gold standard for Jackson Smith-Njigba, other than the fact that he didn't play his senior year. I think if he would have played it with CJ Stroud, there wouldn't be a question about whether he was the one in this class or not.
Yeah, his yak ability, his quick twitch, his stop ability that he has in open space, absolutely love it. I know that people are concerned about his 40 time. I think he's going to be very Cooper Kupp-esque in how he runs, and also how he looks on the field. He's going to be 6 foot 198 in that range, I believe, by the time he actually weighs in and everything at the combine. So he is wide receiver 1 for me right now, and I just, until I am proven otherwise. Yep, I'm going to put him, and I have a 1A, 1B as well, but who is your 1B?
1B, it's going to be the same as you, right? It's going to be Jordan Addison. Yep. You can't, Biletnikoff winner while he was at Pitt, transfers, and then unfortunately, dealt with some injuries while he was at USC with Caleb Williams in his senior year, but still put up good numbers. You just can't deny what he's put on the field. He's performed at 2 different schools. He's been the top wide receiver both places. Jordan Addison is one of the guys that I just don't think you can discount. Like you said, I mean, he's prone to take a play to the house at any point. He's a guy who's going to weigh in at 6 foot 175, a little bit lighter. We'll see if he actually weighs in a little bit heavier than that, but I don't have anything other than the fact that he projects as maybe like a slot receiver. Some people will say for Jordan Addison, he's not going to be maybe the alpha of the wide receiver or for his NFL team, but I think Jordan Addison is going to be a large contributor in whatever NFL offense he does land in.
Yeah, very similar size and weight to JSN. Very similar questions at the same time. I do think that Addison is faster. He did have his 1,600 yards his sophomore year at Pitt, and then transferring to USC, putting up about 60 catches, I believe is what it was, and 875 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was injured throughout the year as well. Just a very talented player. What his upside is, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like he's a guy that you could just lock and load as a wide receiver 2 coming into the league. So I feel really good about that. I think he's going to be someone that is very coveted in fantasy football. So we'll see where he actually gets drafted and what that capital looks like. He could end up being my wide receiver one. I could very, very possibly see that happening based on the draft capital and some of the questions that we've heard around JSN. So yeah, that's wide receiver 1 and 2 for me.
Yep. He comes to a very Olave profile coming out for me, where Olave was a guy who, we weren't exactly seeing as probably having the alpha wide receiver 1 potential in the NFL. But he got into a spot where he was the wide receiver 1, either by default and partially because it's also just a good fucking wide receiver. I think Jordan Addison could fall into a very similar range if he does land at the right team in the right spot.
Yeah, man. So let's hop right in here to our wide receiver 3. I think this will be pretty similar as well. For me, he's a big question mark. He's a guy I'm putting here because of his physical attributes and some of the things that you can see him doing statistically. He profiles as a true alpha, and that is Quentin Johnston out of TCU. But man, I don't like to scout schools necessarily, but TCU's had their issues with wide receivers translating into the NFL. And then you have a guy that's 6'4", 200 pounds, who has games where he shows up and has, 8 to 10 catches and 200 yards. And then you have games where he has no catches or 1 or 2 catches for like single digits, 18 yards maybe. And I just don't know what to do with Quentin Johnston right now, other than him being a freak athlete.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take away from him that he's a 6'4", 210 wide receiver. I mean, that is your stereotypical alpha dominant wide receiver build in the NFL. It's what NFL teams are probably going to covet, and that's why we have him here. I have him as well as my wide receiver 3. But man, you'd like to see more done from him during his time in college. Like you said, on those disappearing acts, I mean, you play in the national championship game and you come out here and put up, like, what was it, 1 catch for 3 yards?
Unbelievable.
You can't do that whenever you're supposed to be an alpha wide receiver. You're supposed to be a guy that can take your team over the next ledge, and you can't do that at the collegiate level. How am I supposed to rely on you at the professional level whenever you're going up against the best in the world, the best in the league, week in and week out? I'm still going to have him up here as my wide receiver 3, but out of all of the guys in my top 5, he's most easily the one that I could see falling out of my top 5 by the time we get to our actual rookie mocks.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I wanted to pull up some of his logs just to really, really look at this. I mean, he had a game of 14 catches, 206 yards, 8 catches, 180 yards, 4 catches, 139, 6, 163. And he has that national championship game, 1 for 3. He has games of 3 for 22, 2 for 22, 3 for 29, 4 for 41, 0 for 0. Like, when I look at an alpha wide receiver, I don't see someone that disappears like that. A lot of his big plays are broken plays as well, playing in the Big 12. So there's questions about, like, how good is he? Is he actually like an elite separator? You're right. I'm putting him here 3 because of those physical attributes and what he can do. At the combine, I'm sure he's going to ball out. Yep. But man, he's the one I am most concerned with, and the one I'm probably okay missing out on too. Like, I feel like where you have to take him to get him, I'm okay just letting that one ride and just say, hey, you want QJ? Go ahead and take him.
I had a real debate here in one of our most recent mocks with Dynasty Barry over in the Destination Devi Discord, where I was at the 110, I believe, and QJ was still on the board. And I felt like I had to take him. I did end up taking him, but I hated myself for doing it.
Yep.
I personally, I don't even like putting him up here at wide receiver 3, but I feel like I have to because I believe the NFL will value him in the first round. And if he does get that capital, if he gets top 20 capital because of his size, because of his attributes, and he can actually translate his game and be more consistent at the next level with, a better offense, a better quarterback than Max Duggan, I think it can work out, but he scares the hell out of me.
Yep. Absolutely agree. Could not agree more. So who is your wide receiver 4?
The top 3, I think the top 3 are pretty locked in. And then we go to we've got guys who are going out to banana land. We got anywhere from the range of Keishon Butte to Rasheed Rice, guy out of SMU, who we might see later. There's no consensus whenever we get here. We'll see what the NFL tells us whenever we get around to draft season, but ran my numbers. I haven't fully refined them yet, but at this point in the process, actually the guy who came out as number 1 in my first run of numbers, he's definitely not going to end up there. I don't want anybody to think that my process is actually telling me this guy is the number 1 receiver in this class, but it is our man out of Boston College, Zay Flowers, wide receiver, is my number 4 currently in the class. Number 1 in my current numbers will change, but I can't deny what those numbers are telling me, man. I mean, he's putting up a breakout age in 2020. The only thing negative about his profile is that he's a 4-year guy. Other than that, I mean, his breakout age being in his sophomore year, put up 800, 750, and 1,077 yards in his last 3 years. Over 4 touchdowns in each of his last 3 years. I mean, his rookie year, even, he was still on the field in his rookie year at Boston College. 22 receptions for 341 yards and 3 touchdowns as a true freshman. Like, you can't, like, this guy has been on the field and producing for his team from the time that he stepped on that campus. And I think he's going to be a massive riser throughout this process as we go through the offseason. We've already seen him being mocked sometimes even within the first round in true NFL mocks. If we see that, it is wheels up for my guy, Zay Flowers.
Yeah, he's absolutely electric, and I think that's the big thing. You know, he is. I think he weighed in at the Shrine Bowl at 190, I believe is what it was. So 5'9", 182. 182. Okay, so 5'9", 182. Hey, that's good enough size. The issue is his height. We'll see how much that actually, matters. That puts him in, he's a little bit taller than Rondale, and I believe he's about the same size as Wandale Robinson. So we'll see, if that does matter. But people have actually said in NFL circles that Zay Flowers reminds them a lot of Antonio Brown, a guy that was drafted later in the NFL draft, but his ability to run routes, his speed, his suddenness, his stop-start ability is second to none. And that will stand out on an NFL field, and that will translate very well. So, yes, I want to see some more on Zay Flowers. The competition is a question because he's in the ACC. But, yes, Zay Flowers is up there for me. I am waiting on him. I feel like because of his size concerns and that's kind of what puts him down a little bit for me, but he's one I could see easily cracking, that 3 through 5 spot for me when all is said and done. I think you might be muted, my man.
That I am. Who do you have at your number 4 spot is what I was wanting to know.
Yeah, my number 4 might be your number 5 here. So I have Josh Downs, wide receiver out of North Carolina. Absolutely love his speed. He's done it with several different quarterbacks, which excited me. His sophomore year, he had 1,300 yards and 100 receptions or 101 receptions, and that was with Sam Howell. His junior season, 94 catches, 1,029 yards. He did have some injuries this year, so only played in 11 games, but did that with Drake May. So he's been consistently able to garner targets in the offense, no matter who is under center. And with that speed, with his size, I mean, he's 5'10", 180. He kind of reminds me of like that Brandon Cooks type player. So I would be excited to see what he does and where he gets drafted. But he's my number 4 right now.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know how once I refine all the processes, I actually don't know how he's not going to be my wide receiver 4 as well. He is my wide receiver 5 at this point, but Josh Downs, with the numbers that he put up, 3-year guy, early breakout age in 2021, in his breakout year, man, like these are just ungodly numbers. 43% of the team's reception share, unreal. For 40% of the receiving yardage, he caught 8 touchdowns, which is 31% of the team's total passing touchdowns. And then he basically just did the same exact shit the next year with a different quarterback. Like that is not a profile that you typically see, and I'm going to be hard pressed. I think NFL teams as well should be hard pressed not to have this guy in the first round of NFL draft in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I feel like that's exactly where he'll end up when all is said and done. Probably a late first type guy. But I really like what he can do on the field, and I feel like he's a guy that could rise up draft boards as well. So we'll see what happens with him and his profile here. That was your number 5 as well. I'm just going to jump right into my final number 5 here, since it is a little bit different, but it is Rashee Rice, the wide receiver out of SMU. I believe he weighed in. He's 6'2" is what I last saw. He was actually 6'2", 200. But I could be wrong on that. Either way, 6 foot, 200, 6'2", 200. He's right in that range. He had a senior year of 96 catches, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. I mean, yes, the competition, it's in the American Conference. It's a little bit different, but he is an absolute stud. And if he does have that alpha build to go along with it, I'm excited for him. I would love to see where he ends up actually going in the NFL draft. And if he can end up in a good situation with a good quarterback, he might be someone on the fantasy radar right off the rip.
He definitely could be. I did just double check. He did record in at the Senior Bowl at 6 foot and 4/12, I guess is how they
4/12. Okay, so yeah,
6 foot and 4/12, so like 6 foot and a quarter, but 6 foot and 200. I mean, he's definitely got the build to be a dominant wide receiver. I've got some concerns about where he's going. I mean, we've seen a lot of mocks with Rashee Rice going to the New England Patriots, and that it horrifies the hell out of you with their talent evaluation of the wide receiver position over the last, I don't know how many years since they've taken Randy Moss and Julian Edelman. That's about it. That's about the list of Patriots wide receivers that I actually like, and they traded for Randy Moss after they knew he was good. So, unfortunately, hopefully that one doesn't happen. However, I would like it for some Mac Jones shares. But as far as the wide receivers go, Rashee Rice, obviously, I mean, he's put up numbers every single year that he's been at SMU with 400, 600, 600, and 1,300 1,300 receiving yards. There, I mean, obviously, he's playing in the American Conference, I believe. Are they? I forget if they're making a switch over to a different conference this next coming year, but he's put up numbers. He's got the size. He's got the traits. I think Rashee Rice can definitely be in the top 5 wide receivers by the time we get to our actual mock or actual rookie picks here in May. I mean, we've still got a long fucking ways to go, man. We're way too early with this one, but got to get here soon. Some of our drafts are before the NFL draft. I don't agree with those, but hey, you got to stamp your mark. Got to get your guys that you absolutely love. I'm going to be on Zay Flowers. You're going to be on Rashee Rice. We'll see how they all play out.
Yeah, I'm probably right there with you with Zay Flowers. I just couldn't do it yet. And it's the same kind of thing. Like when I had QJ up there, I'm like, Rashee Rice has to be up there for me just because of the size and speed. I'm like, I feel like he's an athletic freak. So yeah, man, I think that's the most important thing right now is I want to dive into some of the film on some of these guys, because I think outside of the top 2, really there's a lot of questions, and so I want to see how this whole process plays out and really where they go with draft capital and what we start seeing on film. So any last things before we wrap out of here?
No, I guess the only one that might be outside of the top 5 for you, maybe some Kayshon Boutte. Do you think Kayshon Boutte could end up inside of your top 5 if he gets the draft capital? I think that's our biggest question with Kayshon. I think all of the talent's there for him, but we've seen concerns whether it's on the field or off the field, dogging it in his senior year. What do you think about Kayshon Boutte? Could he be a riser for you throughout this process?
Yes, he could. How high, where I'm really willing to take the gamble on him, I haven't figured out where I'm willing to draw that line. I don't know that he's going to be a first round pick. I don't think he is. If he is a first round pick, that might bump him, up to that 3 range. But man, there's just so much risk, and it's like I'm at that point now where I'm like, I'm okay missing out on Kayshon Boutte. Like if I can get him in the mid-second, I'm willing to do it. because it's past like the top 5 running backs that I'm comfortable with. It's past like the group of wide receivers I'm comfortable with. So I feel like I'd be willing to take a gamble on him in the second. But if you're telling me I have to take him at like the 108 through 112, I'll let someone else take that risk.
Yeah, I know he was a lot of guys, almost wide receiver one coming into this season. And I know I talked to you beforehand here, and I said I might not even be comfortable at this point taking him in the second round.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's just one guy that I'm going to let the NFL draft process prove me wrong. If he does get up into that day 1, day 2 draft capital, then I'll reevaluate the process from there. But at this point, I can't get aboard on Kayshawn. The senior year and all of the surrounding effects for me just turn me off to a point where I'd rather just take a stab at some of these lesser school wide receivers like Zay Flowers or Rashee Rice, a Jalen Hyatt. Those guys I just have more confidence in right now at this point.
Yep. I think that's kind of where we're at. And as we dive into some of these prospects as well, talking about Jalen Hyatt, Tillman, also both from Tennessee, there's going to be some other names that really pop up in this process. Jaden Reed from Michigan State has shown out at the Senior Bowl and could be a big time riser as well. So there's a lot of names out there that still kind of need to be filtered out. And the wide receiver room in general, we knew this coming in was wide open for us. So as we get more into this process, we'll start looking at some sleepers, some guys that we have identified as like, hey, this is a guy I really want, and we'll see if the NFL believes the same thing. So yeah, man, fun process ahead as we wrap things up. This is a way too early ranking for the wide receivers, but this is kind of where we're at right now.
Yep, exactly. And right before we get out, not a top 5, but want to throw one name out there before we do wrap up here. Xavier Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Now, wrap us on out of here, Chase.
All right. Again, please like, subscribe, give us some comments who you think your top 5 are and why we are so wrong with our top 5. Thank you so much again for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.